Good evening. Today's Daf we're going to be learning Daf Hey. We're holding now on Daf Dalam Beis. The line starts with today, the last word Tanan. Just to recap, the Mishnah said that if a Shliach Lehilocha brings a get Mimedinas Hayam from overseas, he has to say Befonai Nichtov, that it was written in front of me, and Befonai Nechtam, the Eidim also signed the get in front of me. And the question is, why does the Shliach Lehilocha have to say Befonai Nichtav or Befonai Nechtam? So we brought two answers. Rabbi said the Fishain Eidim, or the Fishain Chutz La'aretz, the Lashon was the Fishain Bikim L'Shma. People outside of Eretz Yisrael are not familiar with the dinim of the Shema, and therefore they have to say B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam, and then the Beis Din will ask them if it was written L'Shma. And Rava said is the Fishain Eidim Mitzuyim L'Kaima. And we're going back and forth asking Shilas on Rava, on Rabba. So now the Gemara is going to pose a question on Rabba. Tonight we learned in the Mishnah. This Mishnah is brought in Daf Tes Amid Beis. The Mishnah says, "Hamevi get Medinas Hayam." If a shliach brings a get from overseas, so the din is he has to say Befonai Nichtav u Befonai Nechtam, as our Mishnah said. Now, V'einei Yochel Leimar Befonai Nichtav u Befonai Nechtam. What if this shliach le'ilacha brings this get from overseas, but he cannot actually say the words Befonai Nichtav u Befonai Nechtam? So the Mishnah says, Im yesh olav edim, if there's edim on the get. In other words, you have two signatures that are written on the actual get. So the halacha is Yiskayim b'choismov, you can verify the signatures of the get with other witnesses. In other words, you bring two edim. Like Rashi says, Yovayu amakirim achasima, you bring edim that actually recognize, witnesses that recognize the signatures of this get, and then it's a valid get. Okay, so now the Gemara says, "V'havinan ba." Over there, the Gemara asked on this Mishnah, "My ve'ein yochel lemer." What does it mean that the shliach is not able to say? Why can't the shliach say "Befonei nichtav or befonei nechtam"? Turn over to Daf Yomad Aleph. So the Gemara says like this: "Ilema." If you're going to say that we're talking about chedesh, chedesh means somebody who cannot hear and cannot speak. So maybe that's the reason why you can't say Befonei Nichtav or Befonei Nechtam. So the Gemara says you cannot establish that the Mishnah is talking about a chedesh. Why? Because chedesh bar aituya gitahu. Can a chedesh actually bring a chedesh? In other words, somebody who cannot hear, cannot speak, a deaf mute. Could he be a shliach to bring a get? But we learned in another Mishnah. This is a Mishnah which is brought in the Chav Gimel and Aleph. The Mishnah says hakol kshedim lahavias haget. Everybody is kosher to be a shliach to bring a get. Chutz, except for a cheresh, a deaf mute, a sheita, somebody who's a sheita of a katan, and somebody who's below the age of bar mitzvah. They, the Mishnah says, are not allowed to bring a get. Why? Because they are not, like Rashi says, the lav b'nei deyaninu. They are not people that actually have understanding, and therefore they cannot be a shliach to bring a get. And like the din is, you cannot make a shliach, you cannot make a katan to be a shliach for anything. So since the Mishnah says clearly, "Akol ksheim lahavias haget chutz mecher sheita bekatan," the question is, what does it mean when the Mishnah says that "Hamevi get medinas hayam" and the shliach cannot say "Befonei nichtav befonei nechtam"? What type of shliach are we talking about? If we're talking about a shliach that's a chedesh, you can't say that because a chedesh chatchila can't be a shliach. Now, Rabbi Yosef says, what does our Mishnah speak about? Our Mishnah, he explains the Mishnah, what is the case when the Mishnah says that the shliach brings the get, ve'einei yochel leimar? What does that mean? Which means that the shliach gave her the get when he was a normal person. He was a pikeach. In other words, he was able to hear, he was able to speak, and he was a bardas at the time that he actually gave the woman the get. Now, however, at that moment that he gave the woman the get, he was not able to say the words Befonei Nichtav u Befonei Nechtam. After he gave the get, when he tried to enunciate the words Befonei Nichtav u Befonei Nechtam, he wasn't able to actually say these words until he became a A deaf means somebody who can't hear and somebody can't say. And that's what it means. That's what it means, that Eina Yachol Leimar, which means he can't say B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam, that even though at the time of the Shlichus, when he was appointed as a Shliach, and when he actually fulfilled the Shlichus, he was a normal person. Nothing was wrong with him. However, he became a deaf mute at the time that he had to say B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam. And now, what does the Mishnah say? How do you verify? How do you ratify this get? So the din is that Im Yeshel of Eidim Yiskayim Be Choismo. That's what the Gemara Daf Tes establishes the Mishnah. So now, based on this preface, we can now understand the question of the Gemara. So the Gemara asks, L'Rava Nicha, L'Rabo Kasha. According to Rava, so this Mishnah makes a lot of sense. Why? Because what's the reason why Rava holds that the aid has to say B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam is because we're worried that perhaps the aidim that are assigned on the get, who are b'Medina Sayam, won't be. You won't find aidim in Eretz Yisrael that recognize the signatures. So therefore, this woman is going to be stuck. The husband, you can't find two aidim that actually verify the signatures. So therefore, the get won't be a good get, and the husband might come and actually say that the get is a mezuyif. It's forged. So by bringing the two eidim, or by bringing the eidim, and by saying b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam, what the aid is, or what the shliach leilach is accomplishing, is he's validating these signatures, and the husband can't come later and say that it was mezuyif. So the Rava makes a lot of sense that here we're talking about somebody who brought the get from Medina Sayam. He was a normal person. At the time that he had to say the words b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam, he became a chedesh. So now, when you have two other eidim that come and validate the star, the get is a good get. Now, however, l'Rabba kasha. According to Rabba, this Mishnah is going to be problematic. Why? Because according to Rabba, why do you have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam? Is because people in Medina Sayam are not baki l'shma. So the question is, what is it going to help if the eidim now validate the signatures? Even if the eidim come along and say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. But according to Rabbo, why do the eidim have to say b'fanei? Is because you're validating that it's written lishma. So by this chedesh not able to enunciate and pronounce the words b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam, and now you bring two eidim to be mekayim mishtar, you're not really getting anything, because these two eidim who are in Eretz Yisrael, it's impossible for them to say that it was written lishma. So the Chayr is a good shayla on Rabba. Maybe Rabba is incorrect, and maybe the reason why you have to say, I maybe get why you have to say b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtam, it has to do because of being mekayim mishtar. So the Gemara answers and says, Hacha mayaskinan. What are we dealing with the case? So what is our Mishnah talking about? And when it says Yiskayim b'choismav, which means la'achar shalomdu. This is after the people, which we spoke about this before, after the people in Medina Sayam, they learned about the dinim of lishma. So b'negei lishma, we're not worried if the get is written lishma, because people in Medina Sayam now, in that time that this Mishnah was said, know the halachas of lishma. So, if so, why does the shliach? So now, really, you don't really need the shliach to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So, in a case when the shliach leilocha is not able to say b'fanei because he became a chedesh, as long as you have the eidim who ratify and validate the signatures of the star, that's already okay. Are you going to ask the Shema? We're talking about a case that the people already, even in Medina Sayam, know about Lishma. So the Gemara says, if that's really the case, that the Mishnah is referring to a case that they already learned the dinim of the Shema, so Yochol Nami, even in a case when the Shliach is able to say the words B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam, also he should not have to say these words to be Mekayim Mishtar. Why? Because if we say that there's no need to be to ratify the get, in other words, that everybody's Baki the Shema, so what's the point? So it comes out that the only reason why you need to have B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam is to make sure that the get is not Mezuyif. So even if the Shliach is able to say the words B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam, but doesn't say it, you could still be Mekayim Mishtar with signatures from other witnesses. Yet, what does our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah says clearly that we're talking about a case, She'eni Yachol Leimar. Now, what if he's able to say it? It would imply, and he doesn't say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam, it would imply that you can't be mekayim b'choismav. The question is, why not? Even if you're able to say it, you should be able to use the edim, or should be able to use the edim that recognize the signatures. So the Gemara answers and says, there's another issue. We're worried that even if the edim know, even though we're talking about a case that people in Chutz La'aretz know the dinim of the Shema, the Chacham still require you to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. Why? Because Gzeira Shema Yachzer Davar L'Kakulei. I'm worried maybe the matter, this corrupt matter, will return to its state. In other words, people might forget the dinim of that you have to write a get l'shma, and we're worried that it might come back to this state again. So therefore, the Chachamim did not want it to be in a state that people are not going to read Bak l'shma. So they said you always have to say b'fanei nichtav u b'fanei nechtav. So now the Gemara says, okay, if that's really the case, that we're worried about Shema Yachzer Davar L'Kakulei, so then Einei Yochel Nami, even when this Shliach Leilocha is not able to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav, the Chachamim should still be geyser that this get is not a good get. Why? Because the takana of the Chachamim is you have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. So why is it in the case that when he's not able to say the words b'fanei, and then he has edim that are mekayim b'choismav, even if it should not work, even if he's not able to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav, because the Chachamim are worried about Shema Yachzer Davar L'Kakulei. So the Gemara says, this case of somebody being normal or and then becoming a deaf mute, that's something which is very uncommon. We have a klal, that's something which is not common, the Chachamim do not make a gzeira, and therefore this get is kosher, even if the shliach does not say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav when he's not able to say it. So the Gemara asks, but in the case of a woman, when the woman brings the get for herself, so the halacha is that a woman who brings the get as a shliach for herself, in other words, she's the shliach, the husband gave her the get, in order that she should bring it, which we spoke about yesterday, she should bring about this get to Beis Din. So that's something that's something which is not very common, that the husband will give the get to his wife and say, go to the Beis Din and say, b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam, you should be your own shliach. That's something which is not very common. Why? It's not. We learned in the Mishnah, this is a Mishnah that Chav Gimel Amud Beis, the Mishnah says, ha'isha atzma v'mevia gita. The woman herself could bring the get from overseas, and she is divorced. Uvad shesich leimar, as long as she says b'fanei nichtav u'b'fanei nechtam. In front of me it was written, in front of me it was signed, like any other shliach which brings a get from a din sayam. So what do we see from here? That even after they know the din of lishma, we don't say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav only. The only reason why we say b'fanei is because we're worried that Shema Yachzer Davar L'Kakulei. And what did we say before? It's things which are not very common, like Gozer V'Abanim. So the question is, why did the Chacham require this woman to say, when she brings her own get, to say b'fanai, if it's something which is a milsa le'shchicha? So the Gemara answers and says, Shaloi tachlik b'shlichus. The Chacham did not want to differentiate between one shliach and another shliach. In other words, to say that when a shliach brings from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, they didn't want to differentiate to say, this case, it's a milsa le'shchicha, she doesn't have to say, this she does have to say. So they said that even a woman who brings a get has to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. So even though a shliach who becomes a chedesh, she also has to say b'fanei nichtav in binyan, he has to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. But since he's not able to say it, the Chacham were makel, and they say that the get is a good get, even when he cannot say it. So now the Gemara asks, if that's really true, that the Chachamim did not make any difference between one shliach and another shliach, so Baal Nami, also a husband who brings from Medina Sayyam, he brings his own get from overseas to be Megarish's wife in Eretz Yisrael, he shall have to say the words b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. Why? In order shlei tachlik b'shlichus. So the question is, Allah Matanya, why do we learn in the Brayso, who atzmei shehevi gitay, if the husband himself will go ahead and bring this get from overseas, he does not need to say the words b'fanei nichtav. The question is why? If you're saying shlei tachlik b'shlichus, every time somebody brings a get in Medina Sayyam, doesn't matter if it's the woman or if it's the husband or anybody, he should always have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. So the Gemara says, "Time am I Amar Rabbanan?" What's the reason why the Chachamim said that somebody b'chlal has to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav, tzarich lemer b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtav? Why? Because dilma osi bal ma'arev pasali. Perhaps the husband will come and he will start protesting against the validity of the kashrus of the get, and he'll say the get is puzzle. That's the reason why you have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. At the end of the day, we're worried that the husband might come and say, this get that the shliach le'elacha brought is totally mezuyif. So the question is, well, when the husband brings it himself, then hashta minkan nakale biyadei. Now the husband himself is bringing the get. He's bringing his own get to his wife. Are you worried that he's going to come and protest that the get that he himself is holding in his hand, you're going to think that he's going to say later that it's puzzle? Okay, so now the Gemara, so that's one question. The Gemara asked the Rabbah, the Gemara answered and said that it's not a question. Now the Gemara brings another shaila. We're going to bring the words of Rav Huna, and with that we're going to ask on Rabbah another question. Toshma kom, and I'm going to bring you a raya from this brisa. Neged, opposite Shita of Rabbah. The boy Yminei Shmuel Rav Huna. Shmuel asked Rav Huna a question. What does Shmuel ask Rav Huna? Shnaim sheviu get memedina sayam. If two people brought the get, you have two edim or two shluchim that brought a get from overseas. So, and in other words, that both of them are the shliach now to be megarish the wife. So he asked the question. Shmuel asked the question for Rav Huna in the case of shnaim sheviu get memedina sayam. If you have two people that are bringing the get from overseas, so he asked Shmuel Rav Huna a question. Does the two shluchim have to say in front of us it was written and in front of us it was signed, like any other, like one shliach who brings from Medina Sayyam? Or maybe perhaps they do not have to say b'fanai. So Amar Lei, Rav Huna told Shmuel, ein tzrichin, they do not have to say, these two edim do not have to say the words b'faninu nichtav or b'faninu nechtam. Now, and what's the logic? What did he say? Uma ilu yemru. Because what if these two edim would have said, b'faninu gersha, that we saw the husband divorce his wife? Milay mehemnan. Are we not going to trust these two edim? So just like in a case, if these same two edim would come and say, we saw Reuven divorce his wife, we were the two edim that actually saw the whole transaction, we would believe the edim. So for sure, these two edim are believed when they bring the get from Medina Sayyam, they're believed that the get is valid. So they don't have to say b'fanenu nichtav u b'fanenu nechtam. So now, based on this preface, based on the Sakdama, we're going to ask like this. The Rava Necha, according to Rava, it makes a lot of sense. Because according to Rava, the whole point of why you have to say b'fanei nichtav is because we don't want, maybe you're not going to find edim overseas, or I should say in Eretz Yisrael, that are going to recognize the chasimas from overseas. So in order to be mekayim the get that it's not mezuyif, that the husband won't come later and protest that it's mezuyif, I need to say b'fanei nichtav. So that makes a lot of sense. So when you have two edim are so strong, these two shluchim that are two edim are so strong that like we said yesterday, the husband cannot come and protest against the two edim. However, the question is, the Rabba Kasha, according to Rabba said before in Daf Beis Amud Beis, that even though, that we're worried about Lishma, so even though there's no chash of ziyuf, we're still worried about Lishma. So, according to Rabba, even if you have these two edim that bring the get, they should still have to say b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtam. Why? Because they have to protest, they have to validate and say that it was written Lishma. So it's a shtakar shal on Rabba. So my answer is, it says, what are we dealing with over here? What is Rav Huna is talking about when he says you don't have to say it is la'achar shalamdu. We're talking about people in Medina Sayyam that already know the dinim of the Shema. So, in other words, before the people outside of Eretz Yisrael knew about the Shema, so two people who bring the get for sure have to say b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtam. Shmuel's question to Rav Huna was that after the people in Medina Sayyam know about the dinim of the Shema, so the question is, so the whole din of the Shema now knocks off. So the question is, do they have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam? In other words, the Chachamim were not mevatel the takana. Why? Because they were worried about Shema Hadover, Shema Yachzor L'Kukulei. So the question is, do two edim, are they still worried or not? So Rav Huna says, no, they don't have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So the Gemara says, if that's really the case, that the Mishnah is talking about, that the Brisa is talking about after they learned about the Shema, so the question is, Chad Nami, even one shliach who brings the get, also should not have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam in a place which they're not worried about ziyuf. For example, when they bring the get in the same country, which we know Eidim are Matsuyim the Kaime over there. So the Chayra, there should be no chashash of that the get was not written Lishma. In other words, so the Chayra is mashma from one of the dafka and two Eidim bring it. But what about if one Eid would bring? So if let me just explain a little better. If they know about Lishma, so what's the only chashash? The only chashash is that maybe you won't find Eidim. But if we're not worried, if there's one aid that says b'fanei nechtav, also you should not be worried, because you have one, at least the chash of shlei lishma is not applicable. So, but it's mashma from Rav Huna's answer that dafka too. So my answers and says again, I'm worried, like we said before, that the thing that people will not know about lishma anymore. And like the Paskim say nowadays, we're taka retracted, and people don't know that the get has to be written lishma, and therefore the one shliach who brings Medina Yom, for sure he has to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. And even Shmuel knew about this, and the suffix was only in regards to two people. So the Gemara says, now if you're worried about Shema Yachzad over the Kukuli, Beit Treinami, also when two Eidim bring the get, they should also have to say B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam, because I'm worried about also Shema Dover Yachzad Kukuli. So the Gemara says, Beit Treidim Ma'isi Gita Milsa Leishchicha. For two Eidim, or two people to be shluchim, to bring the get, that's something which is not common. So now the Gemara asks the same question. But we know by the case of the woman, the leishchicha, which is not very common for a woman to bring her own get. It's not like we learned later on, a woman could bring her own get, as long as she says b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So why does she have to say b'fanei if it's not a very common case? So my answer is again the same question. The Chacham did not want to make a difference between this shliach and other shlichus, and said a rule across the board that anytime somebody brings a get, always has to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. So when I ask Yachi, if so, Baal Nami also, the husband as well, should also have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav, because shalei tachlik b'shlichus. Allah matanya, why did the Brisa say hu atzmei shehevi gitay? That if the husband himself brings the get from Medina Sayyam, and it's b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. Why don't I say the klal lo shalei tachlik b'shlichus? So the Gemara says again, what's the reason why the Chacham said tzarich lemer b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam is because dilma asi bal ma'ara pasli. Perhaps the husband will come and be ma'ara on the get. That's why he has to say b'fanei. But hashta minka nakale biyodeh. But now that the husband is bringing the get in his own hand, you think he's going to go ahead and start being ma'ara on the get that he brings himself? Okay. So now we bring another question, a third question on Abba. Tashma, I'm going to bring a third question on Abba. Maybe get the Brisa says, maybe get from Medina Sayyam, somebody brings a get from Medina Sayyam, and the son Allah, and gives it to her. So the Brisa is bringing a case, somebody brings a get from Medina Sayyam, but does not say the words, forgot to say the words, b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So the din is, if you're going to find signatures that will be Mekayim Mishtar. In other words, Eidim know about the Chasimus of the get. The din is kosher, it's kosher. V'im lav, but if you cannot find Eidim to be Mekayim Mishtar, then even though there's witnesses on there, the halacha is it's puzzle, the get will be puzzle. The Brisa concludes, that till now they did not have to say, you not have to say b'fanei nechtav, only lahachmer alel. In other words, to be stringent on her, that if you're going to be mekayim to get through the Eidim, so you have to add as well that the Eidim of the shliach has to be on the ksiv and the chasima. So he says, the whole point why the Chachamim said you have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav is not to make a chumrah on the woman, is to make a kula on the woman. And in other words, that the Chacham came with the takana that she does not need to be mekayim it, and as long as one aid says it's kosher, it's kosher. So now the question is, according to Rava, the Brisa makes a lot of sense, because when you say b'fanei nechtav is vital to be mekayim the get, and by saying b'fanei nechtav will be a kula on the woman. But the Rabba kasha, according to Rabba, even after being mekayim the get, you have another issue. You have an issue of that it needs to be lishma. And the Chachamim, we said, the Chachamim came to make it lenient. According to Rabbi, it's going to come out that even if you say b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtam, you're still going to have to worry about lishma. So the Gemara answers, it says, what are we dealing with over here? After the people in Chutz La'aretz learned about lishma, and therefore we're not worried about lishma. And even if the shliach does not say b'fanei nichtav, the whole purpose of the b'fanei is to be mekayim the get. But you just said that the Chachamim's made the Gzeira is Gzeira Shem Yachshar Davar L'Kukule. I'm worried that the thing might go back to its original state. So if so, why does the Brisa say that the get is kosher? If Niskayim B'Chaisma, even if the shliach does not say B'fanei Nichtav or B'fanei Nechtam, L'Chayra, you still have the Chashash of Lishma. So the Gemara says, we're talking about a case, the Brisa is talking about a case, Kishinisis, that this woman got the get. The guy did not say, the shliach did not say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam, and then she got married. So she got married with this get. So you're not going to go on passel with this get that did not say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam because of the gzeira. In that case, the chacham were not machmers. If so, the Gemara says, if that's really so, why does the Brisa say, why does the Brisa say that the whole reason why we say b'fanai is to be mekel? It should have said that the reason why they were mekel in this case is mishum denisusu, is because this woman already got married. Why doesn't the Brisa say this? So the Gemara says, this is what the Brisa really means to say. And if you're going to say that maybe after she gets married, let me be machmer and passel this get, and say, since the shliach did not say b'fanei nichtav, or b'fanei nechtam, and therefore the get should be passel, and therefore she has to be divorced from the second husband. So, they did not come along and say b'fanei nichtav to be machmer, only that she should be mekel. That if she gets, that you don't need to have other eidim to come and validate the shtar. So therefore, if she went ahead and got married, we're not going to, the Takanas Chacham is not going to mess her up. Okay, now we're holding Daf Hey Amud Beis. So again, so he explains this. Now, time am I Daf Hey Amud Beis, the top line. What's the reason why the Chacham made a takana b'fanei nechtav is because Dilma Asi Ba'al Ma'ara Pasali. Perhaps the husband will come and protest on the kashrus of the get and passel the get. So therefore, if she did not get married with this get, so we say that she shouldn't get married and it's not a good get. But now that she got married, Baal Loi Kamar. So now that she got married and the first husband does not come and protest on the kashrus of the get, we're going to go ahead and start making problems for her when she gets remarried, so we don't want to do that. Now the Gemara brings a machlekes between Amoraim, which really, we brought this machlekes between Rabbi and Rabba on the reason why you have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. So the Gemara says this. Really, Rabbi and Rabba is bepluksa de Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. They're arguing the same machlekes that Rabbi and Rabba has, really also Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Shua also had. Chad Amar, one person says that when you bring the get, Mimedinas Hayam, you have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. Why? He says clearly that fi she'ein bekin lishma, because people outside of Eretz Yisrael are not bucking in the shma, and they don't know that a get has to be written for the sake of the woman. Therefore, the shliach needs to say that it was written lishma. Chad Omar, and the other person says that the reason why he has to say b'fanai is the fi she'ein edim mitzuyim l'kaimei is because edim outside of Eretz Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael will not know about signatures from outside of Eretz Yisrael because people in Medinas Hayam are not fluent in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, the shliach has to be saying b'fanei nechtam. He is validating the shtar. Now, so that's the machlekes between Rabbi Yechon. So we see clearly one opinion holds that the reason why you have to say b'fanai is because the vishayin bekin the shma, and the other person says you have to say b'fanai is because the vishayin the mitzuyim l'kaimi. So the Gemara says tistayim, you can conclude that Rabbi Shua ben Levi hu the Amar, that who was the one who held that you have to say the vishayin bekin the shma. This is Rabbi Yechon. Why? This is Rabbi Shua ben Levi. So again, the Stayim and Rabbi Shua ben Levi, who the Amar, you can conclude from here that it's Rabbi Shua ben Levi who says that when somebody brings a get, he didn't say yam, he has to say b'fanei nechtav. Why? Vishayin bekin lishma, because people outside of Eretz Yisrael are not b'kin lishma. And why? And he's the one who held that the reason why you have to say b'fanai is because of vishayin bekin lishma. Why? So he says because Rabbi Shimon ben Abba, because Rabbi Shimon ben Abba brought a get from Medinas Hayam And the Kamei Rabbi Shimon Levi, he brought a get. This guy, Rabbi Shimon Bar Abba, brought a get from overseas to Eretz Yisrael in front of Rabbi Shimon Levi in Eretz Yisrael. V'Amar Lei, and Rabbi Shimon Levi told him, V'Amar Lei, and he asked him, Tzlichina lemeimar b'fanei nichta b'fanei nechta Lei. He asked him, do I need to say, I'm bringing this get now from overseas, do I need to say b'fanei nichta b'fanei nechta? So Amar Lei, so Rabbi Shimon says, Lo tzlichina, you do not need to say b'fanei nichta b'fanei nechta. Why? Because the Chacham required the shliach to say b'fanai only in the first generations. Why shein became the Shema? Because people do not know about the Shema. But in the later generations, the bekin that people are bucking the Shema. So even people who bring from overseas, the shliach does not need to say b'fanai nichta b'fanai nechta. So the Gemara says from here the whole story of between that they came to the Dayan Rabbi Shua ben Levi. And Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and he says clearly that when he asked him that I'm bringing this get from Medina Sayyam, I don't have to say b'fanei nechtam. Why? And he told him, why don't you have to say it? He asked him, I'm bringing this get. Do I have to say b'fanei or not? So he says, no. Why? Because when do you have to say b'fanei is in the previous generations, which they didn't know the Shema. But these people that know about the Shema, then since people now know about the Shema, so you don't have to say b'fanei nechtam. So the Gemara says, Tistayim. What comes out from here? The Rabbi Shimon Levi is the one who holds that when you bring a get from Medina Sayyam, you have to say b'fanei nechtam. Why? Because people who are in Medina Sayyam are not baki l'shma. So if it's Rabbi Shimon Levi saying about the Fishain people in Medina Sayyam are not baki l'shma, and Mela Rabbi Yochanan is the one who holds that the reason why you hold that you have to say b'fanai is because the Fishain Eidim Mitzuyim L'Kaima. So the Gemara says, V'tiz Bara, do you really think that was a story that Rabbi Shua ben Levi tells Rabbi Shua ben Bar Abba that you don't have to say b'fanei nichtam? B'fanei nechtam nowadays is because people, even in Medina Sayyam, know about Lishma. First of all, the Gemara says, V'arabba yislei d'Rabba. We just said yesterday that Rabba is adding an additional reason to Rava says the reason why you have to say b'fanai is the Fishain Eidim Mitzuyim L'Kaima. And Rabba said, as well, you have to say b'fanai is because people outside of Eretz Yisrael are not baki l'shma. So first of all, Rabba holds like Rava. That's number one. So Rabba is made to Rava that you have to say b'fanei nechtav. Even in the case, in other words, in addition to the Fishain Eidim Mitzuyim L'Kaima, he also holds that about what's it called? About Lishma. So even people who in Medina Sayyam who learned about Lishma, still the shliach needs to say b'fanei nechtav to be mekayim l'shtar. So why would Rabbi Shua ben Levi say in Deres HaAchreinim you don't need to say this? The Chayra Rabba holds like Rava. And another thing is Ha'amrinan. We said before that the reason why the shliach has to say b'fanei nechtav even after the people in Medina Sayyam learned about Lishma is because the Chachamim made a gzeira of Shema Yachzor Dov L'Kukule. I'm worried that the people in Medina Sayyam will not know the dinim of or not know the dinim of the Shema anymore. So if so, why did Rabbi Shua ben Levi tell Rabbi Shimon Bar Abba you don't have to say b'fanei nechtav because of people know about Lishma? You still have another issue of Shema Yachzor Dov L'Kukule. So therefore, the Gemara says that's not the story. What happened was Ella Shimon Bar Abba. What was the story of Shimon Bar Abba? He in Shachina have about a day. Really, Shimon Bar Abba came with another man. In other words, two Eidim came to bring this get. And since there was two Eidim, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says that you don't need to say b'fanei nechtam when you have two Eidim, because whenever you have two Eidim, I'm not worried about that you need to find Eidim to be mekayim l'shtar, because the fact is when two Eidim came and said. The two Eidim brought the star. They're basically mekayim the star. So even Rabba will hold that the Chachamim did not make the gzeira in front of two. So the question is, so why didn't you mention anything about the second eight? And the second shliach wasn't mentioned with the story with Reb Shimon Bar Abba is because the kovet of Reb Shimon, we didn't want to mention him because he was a great man. So but in truth there was really two Eidim that saw this story. Okay, so now the Gemara brings another machlekes in regards to somebody who brings a get from chutz la'aretz, and then the Gemara will say that it's totally the machlekes of why you say b'fanei nechta. Okay, Itmar was stated, and we brought this already yesterday. B'fnei kama neisnula. How many? In front of how many? When the shliach brings the get, in front of how many people does he have to give the get to the woman, when this Shteach Leilacha brings the get from Dinas Hayom to Eretz Yisrael, in front of how many people does he actually have to give the get to the woman? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina, Samachlekes, Rabbi Yochanan, Chanina. Chad Amar, one person says b'fnei shnayim, it's in front of two Eidim. In front of two people. Chad Amar, and another person says b'fnei shleisha, in front of three. It has to be in front of a beis din. So the Gemara says, this time, Rabbi Yochanan who Amar b'fnei shnayim. You can conclude that it's Rabbi Yochanan who holds that the Shteach Leilacha has to give the get to the woman, to the wife, in front of two Eidim. Why? The Rav and Bar Rav Chizda aiti gittin l'kamei Rabbi Yochanan, because Rav and Bar Rav Chizda brought a get in front of Rabbi Yochanan. He brought a get from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Zil havli ba'petri." Go and give this get in front of two Eidim, in front of two people, and say b'fanei nichtav u'fanei nechtav. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan holds that two is enough. So the Gemara says, "Tistayim." You could conclude from this story that it's Rabbi Yochanan who holds that the shliach has to give in front of just two, not three. And who's the other opinion? The other opinion is from Chanina. So the Gemara says, "Leima b'hokam ifli." Shall we say that the machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Chanina is totally in this machlekes? The man damar b'fnei shtayim kasavar, that according to the opinion who holds. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan who holds that the shliach has to give it in front of two Eidim holds the she'ein became the Shema, because the people outside of Eretz Yisrael are not baki the Shema. So therefore, it's enough to give it in front of two Eidim. Because if the husband will come along later and be ma'arer and protest, the two shluchim will say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav, and now the husband cannot go ahead and protest. And according to the opinion that holds that, in other words, Rabbi Chanina holds that you have to give the get in front of two people, who hold that the shliach has to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtav. Why? Because Eidim are not mekuyim, not mekayim. You need to have. The shliach has to be mekayim shtar. In order to be mekayim shtar, you need to have a beis din, just like every other shtar. So maybe you need to have and he'll hold that it's because of the fishein the mesuyim mekayim. So the Gemara says, "V'tizbera." Do you really think that that's the machlekes? That the machlekes between and the Gemara explains the machlekes we learned beforehand between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. They argued, what's the reason why the Chacham instituted that you have to say b'fanei nichtav u'b'fanei nechtav? So we explained that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the one who holds that the reason why the shliach has to say b'fanei nechtav is because, again, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds you have to say b'fanei because of she'ein b'kiyim l'shma. So the Gemara says like this: Hamid Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. This that we said before, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Amar l'fishein b'kiyim l'shma. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that l'fishein became the Shema. So Rabbi Yochanan, who argues on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds l'fishein edim mitzvim l'kaimen. Must be that Rabbi Yochanan holds that the reason why the shliach has to say b'fanai is because l'fishein edim mitzvim l'kaimen. Now, so how could you say over here that Rabbi Yochanan b'fnei shnayim? If Rabbi Yochanan over there beforehand holds that the reason why you have to say b'fanai is the fishein edim mitzvim l'kaimen, that means he's going to hold that you have to say it in front of three. And now you're coming along and saying it in front of two. That's one question. Rabbi Islay the Rabbi. We said many times that Rabbi holds of Rava's shita that in addition to ein edim mitzvim l'kaimen, you also have to worry about, in other words, he's not arguing with Rava, he's just adding to Rava. So the Gemara says, really, everybody agrees that you need to have Eidim, which are going to be Mekayim the Shtar. You need to have Eidim that are going to say B'fanei Nechtav. Why? Because Ein Eidim Mitzuyim Mekayim. And therefore, you need to really give the shtar. You need to give the shtar in front of three people. Here, the case is that you have the shliach leilacha, and the shliach leilacha is becoming an aid, is becoming a witness, testifying that he saw the get written b'fanei nechtav. And now, so what's the machlekes? The machlekes is ve'ei nasadayin kamiflagi. Can a judge now become? Can a witness? Become a judge? So then ve'ei nasadayin. Could the witness now turn into a judge? Now, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan who holds that in front of two it's enough, because he's going to hold shliach nasa aid. A shliach could become a aid, and the aid nasa dayan, and the aid will become a dayan. So therefore, all you need to have is another two people with this aid, because the aid now becomes a dayan. You have three people. You have a beis din, so three people is enough, because the aid will be mistaref to the other two people. And according to Rabbi Chanina who holds, and according to Rabbi Chanina who holds, you need to have three. He'll hold shliach naseid. The shliach taka could become a witness, Ve'ein eid nasa dayan. However, the aid cannot become the dayan, and therefore the shliach could be made on the chesimus of the get. He cannot be mistarif to the beis din to say b'fanai. Fact, the Gemara, based on this, well, but we learned a fish halacha that bid-rabbanan. We learned that we know the halacha is that when it comes to dinim which are the rabbanan, the aid nasa dayan, that an aid could become a dayan. So since kiyum shtaris are the rabbanan, according to everybody, the shliach could be mistaref to the beis din to make it 3. So what is the reason why you have to still give it in front of 3? So the Gemara says, you're right. This is what the machlekes is between Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yechna. The Mar Sover, Rabbi Chanina holds, Kivan the Isha Ksheda, since the woman is kosher to be the shliach for the husband, the havias haget, to bring her own get. So Zimnin the Maisila, Itza v'samchale. Sometimes the woman will bring the get, and since v'derech klal, you give the get in front of 2 people, so too, you're going to give the get in front of 2 people, and will come out that the third person who's mitzdaref to the beis din is a woman. And we know a woman is puzzle for edus. She cannot be mitzdaref for the get. So, and will come out that the get is not kosher. So therefore, Rabbi Chanina will hold, and in order for not to come to this chash, the Chacham said you always need to have 3. The idach, and the other person, Rabbi Yechon, is going to hold, Isha made the yada b'leisam chala. Everybody knows that a woman is puzzle to be mekayim the get, and nobody is going to be mitzdaref this woman to bring the get. So therefore, there's no chash of being mitzdaref the woman. Okay. Now the Gemara said, after the Gemara explains, he said machlekes, the Gemara now wants to bring a raya to each tzad. Tanya Kav said Rabbi Yechlan, we learned a brisa like Rabbi Yechlan who holds that the shliach has to give it in front of 2 people. Why? Because maybe you get Medina Sayyam, if somebody brings a get Medina Sayyam on the son Allah and gives it to the woman, V'loy Amar Allah, doesn't say b'fanei nechtam, doesn't say these words b'fanei nechtam. So the halacha is that this get, if she went ahead and used this get, yoitzi, she has to be divorced from the second husband. Why? Because this get is puzzle, and she's still considered a shesish. However, v'havlad, this child is a mamzer, the Rebbe Meir. Why? Because this woman had no right to get married to somebody else. The Chacham said, Ein havlad mamzer. No, the get is only possible with the rabbanon, and therefore the Chacham were not machmer to say that the vlad is a mamzer. So the Brisa says, Ketzed Yasa, what should the shliach do? The shliach that brings the get and then not say b'fanei nechtav, what should be done? This woman got remarried. So the Gemara says, Yitlanu heimeno, they should take the get away from her. The shliach should go in front of 2 and say and say at the time that he gives the get, b'fanei nechtav. So what do you see from here? It proves that even in front of 2 people, it's enough, like Shitas Rabbi Yechon. The Gemara says, V'ra Meir, and according to Rabbi Meir, the Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Meir, just because the guy didn't say b'fanei nechtav, the vlad should be a mamzer. The Maisa, the get was a good get, and there was like a kosher get. The Gemara says in famous. Then Rabbi Meir holds. He has a very famous shita who holds the Amr of Amnuna Mishmei De'ula, which we brought this a little bit yesterday. Rabbi Meir says that any time that somebody deviates from the verbiage of the Chachamim in Gittin, the din is, and gets married to somebody else, Yoitzi, she has to get divorced from the second husband, and V'havlad Mamza, the Vlad will be a Mamza. The Chacham were makman, this takana, he never got divorced. Okay, we'll stop here.